Welcome into Sportsmemo's betting podcast, NFL Every Game on the Board with Teddy Covers. Teddy, welcome into the pod. How are you?
Hey, great to be here, Drew. How are you today, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. And we got, top of the card here? We're doing the first half of games with Teddy Covers. Then we'll bring in minty bets to break down the back half of the card. But starting out here, top of the card, Teddy. We got November 3rd, Sunday action, 451, 452, 9:30 a.m. Eastern kick. That means 6:30 here in Vegas, Teddy. Across the pond, we got Houston and Jacksonville, 46.5 being the total. Seeing the Texans laying 1 or 1.5, depending where you're shopping.
Yeah, and boy, we've got an ugly-looking injury report for the Houston Texans right now. Cluster injuries in the secondary for Houston. Injuries on the offensive line for a team that's already struggling to protect their quarterback. The center, Greg Mance, may not play this week. The tackle, Tyus Howard, may not play this week. Will Fuller's not going to be in action for Houston. So this Texans team is banged up, and they're banged up on both sides of the football, which isn't necessarily good news against a Jacksonville pass rush that ranks number 3 in the NFL in sacks. They have a league-high 58 QB hits. You know, I mean, this is advantage Jacksonville in that regard, especially when we consider the struggles that this Houston team has had in protecting Deshaun Watson and keeping Watson out of pressure. And, you know, Watson's had a rough time against this defense. 139, 234, 159 yards in 3 career starts against the Jags, just 1 touchdown pass in those 3 ball games. Now, obviously, Jacksonville doesn't have Jalen Ramsey this year, but it doesn't mean that their pass defense is way down from where it's been. And, of course, Jacksonville has a built-in advantage for games in London. They really do. The Jags go basically every year. They've been every year that Doug Marrone's been there. 6 or 7 times that Jacksonville has been there. But the players on this roster have gone through this before, where you're flying across the changing time zones and flying across the ocean and dealing with, you know, something that's very different from playing in the States. You know, even when you travel east to west, it's not as far as traveling to London. This is the Texans' first trip to London. So that's advantage Jacksonville as well. I didn't mention J.J. Watt. I forgot to bring up J.J. Watt as a guy that got hurt for Houston last week going through the injuries. The bottom line is the money's come on Jacksonville. I can understand why the money's come on Jacksonville as Jags are pass for this better given the situation. I really think that, you know, the Jags aren't getting a home field edge here, and I honestly think they deserve at least something for the fact that they've been to London in every recent season. That matters in a game like this, especially a game that's being priced in a near pick'em range where the winner likely to cover the point spread.
And Teddy, do you feel that we're getting to enough of a sample size here? And is there anything that you found in these teams playing on the other side of the pond that you bring into your handicap that we might get an advantage over the odds makers?
The one thing that I look for is a team that has experience doing it before.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's the one edge that I found is teams that have been there before have the edge of having familiarity with the experience. And it is a very awkward, unfamiliar experience. Marrone was talking about it. That's some quotes I was reading earlier today, saying that it's a nightmare, you know, the first time you're trying to do that. It's, you know, it's really difficult to get what you need to get done, fly across the pond, and get your team ready for a game that's going to be starting very early in the morning on their own body clock. So the experience does matter, and the fact that the Jags have been there is at least part of the reason why we've seen nothing but Jacksonville money earlier in the week.
Teddy, next game up, we got 4-5-3, 4-5-4 Washington at Buffalo. We're seeing the Bills laying 9 in the hook at home. Low total here, Teddy, of 36.5.
Yeah, and I mean, the Redskins are supposed to go with Case Keenum again this week, but Keenum hasn't been able to practice. He's still in the concussion protocol. They're really hoping they don't have to go with Dwayne Haskins. And, you know, there's at least a decent chance that a pretty good chance that Keenum is going to play, or so we think, so the markets think. But when you have an offense that really isn't producing, and I mean, if you look at the Redskins' last 5 games, they've done nothing offensively. Their highest total was 17, I think, during that span. And now you're going up against an elite defense. And the Bills' defense is really good. What we saw last week from Buffalo, where they got gashed on the ground late against the Eagles, was a team that came out a little bit flat and got pushed around, and the offense couldn't move the football, and then the defense wore down late. But I'm not viewing that as a testament that the Bills' defense is now lousy. This is a bad offense against a good defense. So there is an advantage with Buffalo there. Now, are the Bills the type of team it's easy to lay 9.5 points with? Hell no. We saw that in the Dolphins game, where it's like, can you lay this price with Buffalo, even against a bottom feeder? But the situation here is different than it was in the game against Miami. Now Buffalo's coming off a loss. They're coming off a poorly played loss. And that has a different feel than previously, where they were coming off a win and had been winning. And things were all, fat and happy in Buffalo. That's not the case this week by any stretch of the imagination. And for what it's worth, McDermott's been a pretty good home favorite. Even going back to his days in Carolina's defense coordinator, he's been a guy who you like at home. If Haskins goes here, this money's going to skyrocket. There will be heavy Buffalo money, but even if Keenum goes, I got to think that if I'm playing, I'm laying. I want no part of the Washington Redskins plus points, especially in single digits, despite Buffalo's previous failures to cover as double-digit chalk.
Teddy, next game up, we got 4-5-5, 4-5-6, Tennessee at Carolina. I guess quarterback questions on both sides of the ball. We're seeing 42 being the total, -3 in the hook. There is a -4 out there. That's the Panthers laying at home.
Well, I don't know. There's a QB question for this game. Tannehill's going for Tennessee, and Allen's going for Carolina. There's going to be no Cam Newton. And I really thought that last week's game against the 49ers, where Allen finally had he was rough. Some of that was the defense that he was facing, but he looked like a young quarterback making his first trip around the NFL. And when Carolina fell behind in that game, it was over very early. So I thought that, hey, here's a transition to Cam Newton, and then the report is Cam Newton's still not ready, and Allen's going to be fine, and maybe he'll learn something from last week, and so on and so forth. But I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more Titans money. Tennessee off back-to-back wins. Neither one was pretty. Neither one was pretty at all. They're lucky with the missed field goal and the Chargers fumbling and doing what they do. But nonetheless, they're back to 500. The playoffs are in reach. The schedule is reasonable. And it's a defense that's allowed 20 points or less in every game this season. Carolina's not chucking the football downfield with Allen at QB. Not even close. They're averaging 5.4 yards per pass play over the last 4 weeks. That's 30th in the NFL. And they're laying points against an elite defense and a team that is coming off back-to-back wins with some positive momentum. And since they lost Kawan Short to the IR, the Panthers' run defense has struggled as well. Gashed again last week. Number 32 in the NFL in run defense DVOA. That's not a team that I'm excited about laying points with in this one. Although, boy, this is not a game where I'm anticipating Ryan Tannehill to have a monster game either. Rivera's defense, number 2 in sacks, number 4 in QB hits. And that comes despite having an early bye week. So it's the type of game where, Carolina's off an embarrassing loss and Tennessee's off back-to-back wins. So you can understand why there is some market support for the Panthers. But laying more than a field goal? Not for this better. I'll tell you that much. And no surprise here if this is another relatively low-scoring Titans game, a team that has been cashing under tickets with some regularity this season.
He's Teddy Covers. Follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers. And guys, we got a special coupon code here for the podcast. TC29 gives you his 3-day all access for only $29. That's less than $10 a day. Teddy Covers is 3-day all access. TC29 is the coupon code. Get his 3-day all access for just $29. It's the cheapest I believe you can get for a subscription for Teddy Covers at sportsmemo.com. Coupon code TC29 at checkout. Chicago at Philadelphia up next. Teddy, we got -5 here. That's the Eagles laying at home. 42 being the total.
You want Chicago?
I don't want Philadelphia.
I don't want Chicago. So I'd rather have Philadelphia than Chicago. And look, whatever the Bears were supposed to be on offense, they're not. And the coming in the preseason, I was thinking, hey man, the Bears' offensive line is better. It isn't. The skills and talent's there. Yeah, sure it is. But if you can't protect your quarterback and your quarterback continues to make bad decisions. And more than that, the coaching staff doesn't trust Trubisky. You see it in the play calling. You see it in the red zone execution. They have 15 plays inside from first and goal last week. It didn't punch it in.
Yeah.
And any of them. And that had a lot to do with the play calling because they're not trusting Mr. Trubisky to make any reads in the red zone. All right. They ran a play with one receiver. That's what they're doing. Trubisky averages 3.2 yards per pass attempt under pressure. That's the lowest rate in the NFL. And Philadelphia, the strength of that defense is the front seven. They will put pressure on Trubisky here. And the way they lost, not that the Bears, nothing's over at Halloween, okay, in the first week of November. But it's a Bears team that's already taken some punches. And the way they lost last week and getting booed off the field and all of that kind of stuff. Chicago needs to run to win, and this is not a defense in Philadelphia that you can expect to be able to run the football against. The Eagles are holding opponents under 3.5 yards per carry, number 3 in the NFL against the run. They're dominant, so Trubisky's going to have to make plays. Can you trust him to do that? Now obviously, for the Eagles. Now you're in and Philadelphia, look, they faced a very tough schedule early on. They had a lot of things go wrong. The injuries weren't right for Philadelphia. But they had their cornerbacks back. Darby and Mills both came back last week. Deshaun Jackson could be back this week. Doug Peterson, we talk about home fields and reasonable home fields. Peterson's been real good at home, 18-8, 18-11 ATS. Their defense has been a lot better at home. I don't want the dog here. It's favorite or pass for this better. Chicago is, I'm not going to call them a sinking ship, but they're certainly not trending in the right direction. And the point is, I'm not convinced that something's going to happen between last week and this week that allow the Bears to bounce back. Worth noting, as the offense has struggled, the defense has declined as well. That, too, a concern for Chicago. That defense was eating up everybody the first month of the season, and they're not eating up everybody these days. They're getting a little bit worn down, too.
Well, what do you think's wrong with Philadelphia's offense then, Teddy? I guess last game they played better, but overall, it's not like Carson Wentz has looked, like he has in the past in terms of his top line ability.
The Eagles have had a lot of weird games. They've had more than one out of sync game, and the loss of the loss of Deshaun Jackson was huge, and the lack of a deep threat has been a problem for Philadelphia, but. Their problems, to me, have much more to do with execution than personnel. And execution problems I expect to get, especially for a team that's been to the playoffs or won a Super Bowl like the Eagles, I don't expect that to go on indefinitely, and it hasn't. Obviously, last week they bounced back strong and in a pretty big way.
Good stuff, Teddy. We got Minnesota, Kansas City up next. Not seeing many lines out there. You want to hit on this one?
Yeah, there's nothing out there right now. In terms of, we have nothing on Patrick Mahomes yet. I will say this. I said last week it was a 10-point adjustment for Moore, and Moore played better than I thought he would. Mm-hmm. A lot better than I thought he would. I have to give them credit for that. And I'm like, that was too big of an adjustment. I would anticipate if Mahomes plays, it's the thing we're seeing now is Minnesota -3 with Moore. And I think if Mahomes played, it's going to be KC -3, 3.5. So we'll see between a 6 and 7 point line move based on the QB situation. That being said, this is you want to talk about a running game mismatch. This is it. The Vikings should be able to run down Kansas City's throat with Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook props might be a thing to look at this week because you can anticipate what the Vikings are going to try to do, what everybody does with Kansas City. Run the football, keep that offense off the field. I think Dalvin Cook could get 30, 35 touches this week. Who knows how many yards he's going to get against that defense.
Teddy, next game up, we got 4-6-1, 4-6-2 New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. And I know from personal experience, these two fan bases, at least in South Florida in Hard Rock Stadium, don't really like each other. Should be a rowdy atmosphere down there in South Florida. We got the Jets laying 3 on the road, 42.5 the total here, Teddy. Is this the one? Is this the game that Miami grabs a win?
Bet this game at your pleasure, okay? I do not anticipate being involved in a game. Again, it'll be a game played in November where the two teams have combined for one win on the season. Who do you want to buy low on? I guess it's look. Miami has played competitive football for 3 weeks running. They played a competitive game at Buffalo. They played a competitive game at Pittsburgh. They played a competitive game against the Redskins. And the Fitzpatrick has brought something to an offense that doesn't have a lot of playmakers. And Rosen was a sitting duck behind that offensive line. Fitzpatrick has been able to at least make a little magic at times. And defensively, they played. They played with energy and passion. I'll give them credit for that. And when everyone talks about, all they want's a number one pick, if you're playing for the Miami Dolphins, that's not what you want. If you're a Dolphins fan, you might want that. If you're in the front office, you want that. If you're playing, that number one pick might be your spot, and you're bye-bye, and now you're sort of looking for a career. So to think that the players for Miami don't care about winning simply isn't true. They do. And the same story with the Jets. I think there's a far more upside with the Jets than with the Miami right now. I mean, the Jets are capable of winning games. We've seen them win a game. I wouldn't be surprised if they win more games before the season's done. And the struggles they've had, in addition to the talent dearth, they've been a really banged up team. With Darnold has had 4 different injuries this year. Whether it's mono and the enlarged spleen and the toenail and then something last week. When Darnold has time to throw, he's a good quarterback. The Jets have some good matchups for the passing game this week. It's not like Miami puts pressure on opposing QBs, the Dolphins are going to fight, and they're going to continue to fight. But fighting and covering +3 are two very, very different things. One thing, hey, we fought, we're plus 14.5. Okay, great. Now you're going to cash a ticket.
Right.
Even in that game against Pittsburgh, you're still sweating Miami in the closing minutes because there's another turnover.
They almost
and you're like, geez, did they bring this back? And it was the same story against the Bills. So, I mean, I know I don't want Miami in this price range. I'm not going to ask the Dolphins to win a game this season. I'm not. And, of course, we have Adam Gase returning to Miami to face his former team. But, a Jets team with without the starting center, without the starting left tackle, I guess if I had to play it, I lay 3 with the Jets. But, I mean, the market's already there. Now it's 3 minus a quarter on the Jets in a lot of spots. And this isn't a team I want to lay minus a quarter with when I'm laying a field goal with the New York Football Jets.
Yeah,
easy pass.
I'm with you, Teddy. And just like conceptually speaking towards betting in the NFL, is there a certain number where you kind of switch off from, winning the game? Like if you're betting Miami Dolphins, in my opinion, yeah, put the 3 in your pocket, but you're thinking they're going to win this game. Is there a certain number where you go, okay, I think this team can cover rather than just win the game? Does that present itself at 7 or 9, or is there?
Even 3.5. Okay. At 3.5, I know at 3 or less, I'm expecting my team to win the game, and and betting accordingly when it comes to versus side versus money line. Okay. I will put anywhere between 25 and 50% of my wager on the money line when I'm taking a dog in that range.
Okay, good stuff from Teddy Covers on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. We got one game left in this segment. Then we're going to bring Minty Bets on to finish off this NFL card, this NFL Sunday card, and a look ahead towards the Monday Nighter. We got the coupon code TC29 at checkout for his 3-day all access. You'll get all his college football, NFL, any Friday night selections, NBA as well. And don't forget, guys, we got college basketball starting just next week. So that coupon code is TC29 for his 3-day all access package at Sportsmemo.com, and he is 57% in the NFL. That's 189 and 142, 57%. That's since 2015. Last 5 years in the NFL, hitting 57%. Very impressive in the National Football League from Teddy Covers. Teddy, last game up for the segment, Indianapolis at Pittsburgh, 463-464. The rotation numbers here. Looks like Indy laying 1 on the highway, 42.5 the total here, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's got some serious cluster injury problems at the running back position. You don't necessarily worry too much about cluster injuries at running back. All that being said, for the Steelers, we don't know if Connor's going to go. The backup's hurt. It could be Samuels this week, who has had issues in pass protection in the past. And, of course, with a backup quarterback in Mason Rudolph, you don't want issues in pass protection. All that being said, from a defensive standpoint, there's no comparison between these two teams. All right. when we look at let me get the numbers right here so I stop bubbling them off the top of my head. I want the actual numbers, not what I think the numbers kind of are. So, sorry, just let me call it up real quick because it was really stood out. Our yards per play. All right, the Steelers sitting at 5.1 yards per play allowed for the season. Indy's at 5.9 yards per play. That's a 0.8 yard differential. That's significant. And Pittsburgh on a yards per play basis actually outgained their opponents by 0.1 yards per play. Indy getting outgained by 0.6 yards per play. And again, these are just yardage stats that don't tell the whole story, but it's one piece of the equation. Against the run, Pittsburgh holding foes to 3.7 yards per carry, Indy allowing 4.8. And in my mind, that's the key to the handicap here. Because if you want to beat the Steelers now, it's real easy. You stop the run, and Mason Rudolph's not going to beat you. If you're not going to stop the run, it's not going to be as easy. It's a Steelers team that they showed us. And again, on Monday night, when they're down 14-0 early, they could have folded. I mean, no one would have said anything. And, hey, it's been a nice run for Tomlin, and it's been a nice run for Pittsburgh, and, oh, this isn't their year. But they didn't, all right? And some of that's the Dolphins stinking, but some of that's Pittsburgh's character. And for all the criticism Tomlin takes, the Steelers don't quit. And this is a team that still, if you look at their schedule, they can make a run here. It's not out of the question for the Steelers to do something over the back half of the campaign. They have the momentum off the win on Monday night. They're playing an Indy team that's won 3 in a row, 5 of the last 6, a little bit fat and happy. Jacoby Brissett, again, we worry about teams perhaps throwing against the Steelers, not running against them. But Brissett's, 27th in the NFL in yards per pass attempt, 6.9 yards per attempt. I don't know that Indy's going to get it. They were settling for field goals last week, and I'm not convinced they're going to put the ball in the end zone this week. And you ask me, who does this game mean more for? It means more for the Steelers. So I know the injury report for Pittsburgh isn't a pretty one, and I understand they're on a short week, but my numbers say that Pittsburgh's live in this one, and then right now they're catching points. So whatever that's worth.
Great stuff, as always, Teddy. The NFL, every game on the board podcast here, sportsmemo.com, where you can consume it. Also on the iTunes, Apple podcast app, and on YouTube. We got the video cast as well. The coupon code TC29 at checkout gives you his 3-day all access for just $29, 57% in the NFL, last 5 years running. Teddy, anything you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
No. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate your support, and we really appreciate your enthusiasm about the new look, the Sports Memo podcast. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, and best of luck this weekend. Enjoy the games, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, Teddy. Best of luck to you, man. Thanks for the time. We'll have Teddy on the opening line report each and every Monday on the podcast, and we'll have Minty Bets on tomorrow. That would be Friday's podcast, the NFL rest of the Every Game on the Board podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck with your bets.